Everyone, welcome to another episode of Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk. I'm TechMan16.
And I'm Strange Kirk.
So today we're going to do a little something different. Instead of interviewing people, we've got Star Trek Discovery Season 3 coming out the 15th of October 2020, and is going to kick off a brand new series in which the adventure takes into a future timeline away from established canon so Discovery can find its own identity. Now, anybody who's heard my previous podcasts and Kirk's opinions as well, we're not necessarily big fans of Discovery. With the caveat that we are Star Trek fans, we will support Star Trek because it is Star Trek. But in my words, Star Trek Discovery has a bigger budget. It's got a good cast. It's got good acting, but the one thing it lacks, in my opinion, is the writing. And we've got a panel of guys, some that like Discovery, some that don't. And I want to kind of get into a summary in a few brief sentences. What do you think Season 1, Season 2 of Discovery were about? And then what do they think Season 3 will contain? So, without further ado, I've got Kirk's with me, Handy's with me, Amorgin from Amorgin Gaming's with me today. How you doing, man?
How's it going?
I've got Admiral Jansen with me. I've got UltimatDJz with me. Let's start with Amorgin. Amorgin, how did you like Discovery Season 1, Season 2?
I liked the second half of Discovery Season 1. That's what made me watch Season 2. I was looking forward to it, a load of anticipation, thought this was going to be the real shit, and now that the little bit of time has passed, I'm a little bit disappointed with what it's left me with. I don't feel like going and rewatching it the way I would like the Next Generation or the original series or Voyager or any of those. The format's not really my thing. I know it's the modern format, it's one big storyline that you're coming back every week to catch up on it, and I personally would prefer the kind of standalone episodes that deals with a topic and then the next week it's something else, and that kind of thing is a slightly older format. But one of the things that really caught me at the start, that got me really excited, was it really kind of it harked back to the original series. Even the theme music, there was a part in the opening theme music that was reflecting the old original theme and all of this, and I thought, right, this is really going to go somewhere. And I found myself a little bit confused at the start with what they were doing, but by the time it kind of brought it round full circle, then at the end of the Season 1, I was kind of happy enough. I didn't like Spock. I thought I thought he was too good looking. I thought he was too much of a he's a good enough actor and all that there, but I didn't like his character. I thought it was reasonably well acted. I thought Burnham was all right, but I don't know, a little bit too, adding in the fact that Burnham was fucking Spock's sister and shit like this. And I was like, I don't know about that. Like, we never heard of this kind of shit before. It seems like they're just bringing in shit to make it fit their story, Having said that, there were moments in Discovery there where I was like, there was a moment where I was watching a scene and they were on the ship. I think Tilly was running around the ship, and some guy just rolls past in a wheelchair, and I was like, what sort of fucking tokenism is that, to put a guy just rolling past in a wheelchair just to be able to say, oh, we've got a guy in a wheelchair in the cast, this kind of thing. Well, like, if you're going to really fucking pay tribute to a disabled guy that's able to do his job on a fucking starship out in deep space, then make him a bloody genius sitting at a console somewhere where nobody else can do his bloody job, like a Stephen Hawking's type guy, you know what I mean? That's just an absolute and utter fucking genius, and nobody else can do this. Don't give us this tokenism where he happens to roll by in the background, and then there were a load of other issues. I don't want to labour it on too much because I know you have other stuff you want to get into, but then there were other issues that we've talked about with Jansen and others before. We've debated this backwards and forwards and inside out in the past around, like, Tilly's kind of trying to get fit, she's slightly overweight, all of this kind of thing. And it's like, if you're the cutting edge of deep space fucking exploration and you're out there, facing all of these challenges or whatever, Tilly probably would have never passed the fucking medical to get onto the ship in the first place. She's not going to be getting fit later on once they've assigned her. Now, I know the argument back to that was Tilly's a bit of a genius and all of this kind of shit, but I don't know, like, if I was in the fucking academy Academy and a character like Tilly came along, she's so ditzy and all over the fucking place that I don't know she'd be one of my choices for putting on a ship, you know?
There's a weird fix because in doing I'm a bit of a nerd, so in doing some research about what happens when humans go out in space, there is no way right now to really mimic artificial gravity in a way that resembles Earth's gravity. We just do not have that kind of technology. So the reason that, to your point, um, somebody like Tilly, by the way, and uh, it's not impossible for somebody like Tilly who's trying to lose weight to have a role in, say, in kind of a collaborative effort to be in space. It's just what happens is your muscles waste away because you can constantly have to work out. So, in fact, if this was to today's standards of technology and the way we would create artificial gravity, she would still, like everybody on Discovery, would have to work out like 3 to 4 hours a day, like they do on the International Space Station. So I don't foresee it as infeasible as somebody like Tilly being there just because she's a little overweight.
Fair point. I don't have a particular difficulty with it. These are just things that stood out watching it. Like, I know it's not really part of the storyline and all of that. What we're talking about, it's more me looking at it and trying to wanting to believe this, wanting this to be believable, and them throwing things at me that I found hard to digest. And then add in the tokenism that seemed to be there, and they seem to be trying to kind of, I suppose, tick every box and say, well, this is politically correct. This is politically correct. This will attract fans. This will attract fans. Like, I mean, one of the things that they did do really, really well is the gay couple, the two gays. That was believable. The times that we're in, why wouldn't you have a relationship on a starship? And why wouldn't that relationship be two gays or two girls or whatever? It's 100% no problem with that. That was one of the things that I suppose had this kind of modern political agenda behind it, we'll say. I could maybe phrase that better, but it's one of them things that I found believable. These two guys played their characters really well, and it didn't matter to me. It didn't stand out to me as those that it seemed forced in any kind of way.
Right, which is I think Kirk has made the point in the past that it was done in a very tasteful way.
Right.
That the relationship was there. You're in close quarters. You're going to be with somebody who you want to be with, and it doesn't matter where it's two dudes or two girls.
Exactly.
No, it was done in a very tasteful way. It was done in a way that it didn't feel like if you disagree with this, we're cramming it down your throat. It was done. It was presented in a very tasteful way, and it was very believable. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There were other elements that just got to me in terms of the canon of it, like I've mentioned about Spock and Burnham and all of that already. I mean, I know that this is kind of top secret tech that they have, and it's not being revealed within the Federation too well and all of that. But this idea that we've got this spore technology, and that it's dated back before Voyager, before Deep Space Nine, before the Borg, before all of this kind of stuff that we learned later on, that comes in the timeline later on. And it's like, shit, if we had spore technology, surely when the Borg were about to destroy Earth, like when they were coming our way, surely we would have been utilising that, and we wouldn't have been saying, no, you have to keep that a secret and can't use it.
That's one of my biggest gripes. That's one of my biggest gripes with Discovery. How come it's supposed to take place 10 years before the original series, but it's got all this super advanced technology and holographic projections and spore technology, but then the Enterprise, there's some big klaxon siren and a bunch of big red buttons.
And like if you take episodes like the original series, like the Tholian Web, or you take this is the flagship. Why wouldn't the flagship have spore technology, right? The Enterprise, right? So if you take episodes like the Tholian Web, and they're the first ship going out there to go to the edge of the universe, or even in the Next Generation, the first episode of the Next Generation, when they go out and they first meet Q, and Q traps them, and they meet that big net and whatever, they can't get away. Surely, if you're sending a ship out and that's going to be the cutting edge like that, surely they're going to have spore technology, and they're just going to jump to another part of the universe. And the Tholians aren't going to trap them.
Or, for example, Voyager, where you
Exactly.
get stuck on the other side of like that would have been solved. Oh, okay, we destroyed the caretaker's array. Let's jump. Black alert.
Yeah, and even if Voyager didn't have, like, Voyager is a science vessel anyway, but if Voyager didn't have the ability for the spore drive, like, surely if a ship like Discovery existed within the fleet, surely they would have sent Discovery to try to rescue Voyager.
Right, or that too.
You know, so the wee things like that. You know, like, I really liked I really liked the way that they kind of brought in the alternative universe stuff again. That was decent, the way they done that. It's been done a couple of times throughout Star Trek, and I don't have a big problem with that. The alternative universe thing is the one element, I suppose, out of the 2 seasons there. If it was to pick something there that I'd be interested in seeing that explored further, that would probably be it. The Red Angel, all this kind of stuff, it started to lose me a little bit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was a bit. It was, to me. It was just asinine. And I could go on all day about how the Klingons look like cartoon characters, and it's just ridiculous that what they did. To me, they took way too many artistic liberties.
Klingons actually not something I had a big difficulty with. Like, there was no need to change them so dramatically, but at the end of the day, if you're going back to before the original series, you're going 10 years previous to the original series, and you go back to what it was like then, when the Klingons were these big bad fuckers that they were mean fuckers that you didn't mess with, and they were a real threat, and they were very intimidating and aggressive and all of that there. They fitted with that for me. They reinvented the Klingons to be this kind of race that's out there that you really don't want to get into a tangle with them if you can help it. Like,
but the problem to me for Klingons is that the race has already been reinvented. We went from the Klingons were just dudes with a bunch of dark face paint with beards and mustaches to now they had the ridges and everything like that, and then they went through this big deal about how they explained the reason why the ridges weren't on the original ones, and that was cool. But you can only change something so much within the same universe before you kind of go, okay, guys, stop trying to be creative for no reason.
Right. And that's a very good point, Kirk, because they went from the ridges to the augment virus, which got rid of the ridges, which is why the Klingons were more human looking in the original series. But then you have this continuity, and then it's never explained why they got their ridges back after a certain point. However, like somewhere in the middle, you go from ridges to reptilian, scaly, bald people, and then eventually grow hair, and then somehow are now 10 years later human. That was just weird. But anyways, enough about that.
The thing is, I'm gonna get this in. You shut up. I'm gonna get this in. My biggest gripe, because we've always been talking about, we're gonna talk about Discovery. We'll finally do it. I'm saying my piece. Shut up. Will you just shut up, man? Anyway, so my biggest gripe is, I think that as far as races go, Klingons are probably the most popular race in the Star Trek universe. I don't think that's really disputable. You go to any Star Trek convention, there's more people dressed like freaking Klingons as far as costume goes than any of the other races, besides, a simple Federation outfit. That's easy.
Yeah, can't you go and fucking do a degree in university now in Klingon? Like,
yeah, I mean, and you got a I mean, it's gone to court. The Klingon language has been to court, and they've argued over whether or not people should be able to use it and all that stuff. And they're like, well, you created a language, but you can't own the language. So just the biggest gripe that I have is that Klingons were not broken. I understand, the technology allowed for better prosthetics and you can make them look different. I understand that. That makes sense to me. So now you made the Klingons look different. You go through this whole story about how now they have ridges. It's great. The race was not broken. The race was great. You had so much backstory and the lore and their religion and the way they did things and their rituals. And then now you want to go change it again. And it just pissed me off.
Okay. Moving on to Discovery Season 3, Amorgin. What do you think is going to be the storyline?
Honestly, I was saying there, it's one of the Star Treks that I haven't had an inclination to go back and rewatch. So I'm a little bit rusty, I'll be honest, right? If I had gone and rewatched them, I probably should have went back and watched a couple of episodes before I came to do this podcast with you, but I didn't. So I'm really not sure, and there is a level of disinterest there, to be fair. I'm not sitting here wild excited for the first episode of season 3. Right, I will watch it, absolutely. Like you said at the start, we're Trekkies. I'll follow the Star Trek stuff no matter how badly it's done. But I'm not wild excited about it. What I hope it is, I hope that they have learned from some of the feedback that's been out there, because I think there's been a fair amount of criticism there. People have been, long-term Trekkies have been asking questions of it. My hope is that it will, rather than use the tokenism that we talked about, it will deliver on something that's relevant to the modern era, right? So for me, and I suppose if I have a bit of time to explain this, for me, like I'm not American, right? I watch
Away. That away.
I watch the Star Treks, and there's always that hint of that kind of American thing going on, right? It's an American production, that's perfectly fine, right? I always had this affinity to it when I watched it. If you look at the original series, you had characters like your man Riley in it who got drunk and fucked up the ship and things like that there. Or in The Next Generation, you had Chief O'Brien, and he was in Deep Space Nine as well. And there was always this kind of connection with this Irish connection. There was that tip of the hat to the other races and cultures that made America, we'll say, right? You had the Oriental gay in Sulu in the original series. You had all of these kind of things going on. Chekhov, the Russian gay, all of these kind of things going on that were challenging for your average American maybe at the time, but also recognizing the Irish thing in America by having the odd Irish gay thrown in, right? So we always felt kind of included, if you know what I mean. We have a relationship. Ireland has a special relationship with America, and that's played out a little bit in Star Trek. It seems to have lost that sense of recognizing the cultures and the races that were a big part of the development of America, while the cast and the Federation itself seemed to be a vague reflection of what the United States represented. The United States, for an Irishman, was always this place that you could go and have a hope for a better life, right? Emigration from this country was huge over the years. I think it's only in the last generation, really, that we've had a slowdown of that emigration. But emigration to America from Ireland has been huge for 150 years. And that idea that we have that connection, and that what the United States represented for me, and I'm sure for many other cultures and many other countries, is the land of opportunity, it's the land of the free and the home of the brave, and it's what America represented. And it was kind of alluded to in previous episodes of Discovery, and people who have been digging down into it a little bit, and I suppose trying to read between the lines, are talking about this possibility of the fall of the Federation, that there's only a certain amount of stars on the Federation flag, and that there could be a breakdown in the Federation and things like this. And my hope would be that if that is the case, if those people are onto something, that the difficulties that we're looking at in the United States now, I'd like, if it's a case that the Federation in some vague way reflects what the United States represented at one time, that the Federation represented in this sci-fi universe, I'd like to think that Discovery would be brave and unafraid in an honest way to go and reflect what's going on in the United States at the minute. And that's without the tokenism, without paying too much attention to ticking the political box for Black Lives Matter or any of this kind of stuff. Genuinely going and looking at the difficulties that's there in the United States by saying that, well, the Federation can experience these difficulties as well. And for somebody who's not from America to see that being done in an honest way in this universe, and we talked, I don't know if before we started recording, we talked, I suppose, a little bit about the difference in morality and politics. And I think Kirk had mentioned about the difference in morality and politics, and it's the morality of what has built the United States, where the United States finds itself now, and can we look at the morality of the Federation and how, like, and let's be real about this, the United States has this fucking nasty habit of interfering in fucking the affairs of other countries and other places all around the world. Like, you have this tendency to be to think that you're the center of the fucking universe, like, right? Like, you've got baseball, the World Series and all, and it's like, well, hold on a second, not everybody in the world plays baseball, you know, you're calling it the World Series, right? But it's this idea that if the Federation has made some of those mistakes by going out and getting involved in these other races around the universe and things like that, there maybe Discovery could touch on that in an honest way without all this fucking tokenism and political tick boxing exercise just to keep people happy and to, you know, to make everybody think that those great yous are cutting edges or tackling the real issues when you're really not doing it in an authentic way at all times, you know. I'd like to see a number of the issues, because let's face it, the issues that the United States are facing at the minute, it's not just one issue. There's a whole raft of things combining there that's creating a bit of a powder keg. So I'd like to think that that could be reflected in the problems that the Federation are experiencing, because there's a number of different issues and we can see all of those tackled in the various different episodes as it goes forward.
The thing that I will agree with that, that, you know, without getting political, there are definitely some issues. What I will say is that, you know, just like in the Federation, when there's a problem, it creates a ripple effect in the rest of the Star Trek universe. You know, when the Federation faces a problem, there's a ripple effect into the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Star Empire, all these other things. And the same thing in the United States. If there's a big issue, that definitely ripples through the rest of the world. And of course there are other countries that will also have the same issue. If there's an issue in Russia or China, there's an issue in the UK or something like that, it creates a ripple effect. And being able to touch on that, no matter what, you know, I sort of agree, and I think that it seems like the Federation was almost modeled after the United States, but in a way that was, okay, let's look forward how we would like the United States to be eventually, you know.
Right, yeah.
I do agree with you that it should be approached in a way very much like how they approached certain issues back in the day, where instead of ramming it down your throat and this is the way you should think, and if you don't, you're a bad person, just presenting it, showing the both sides, planting that seed, and then stepping away.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned before we were recording about, like, for me, coming from Ireland and how they presented the Maquis, for example. The Maquis were a terrorist organisation. It didn't need to name any particular organisation or any particular conflict or whatever else. But for the likes of me watching that was relevant to me. It was tackling issues that were relevant in the place that I grew up and in the community that I grew up in. And it felt like they were touching a real relevant point, and that the wider world, without getting into the details of who's right, who's wrong, what this is all about, it felt like it was presenting that seed, planting that seed, like you say, and letting people make up their own minds about how this thing works. And I'd love to see something like that happening with Discovery. Like, there are lots of other things I could get into. Like, I mean, look at COVID, for example. Could Discovery go down a road somewhere and start dealing with, like, is there a virus that, I don't know, the Romulans release, like, or something like that? Then, you know, and we have to change everything because of it, or stuff like that, you know.
Well, Star Trek throughout its history has had various virus self-contained episodes. So it, you know, there's a lot of inspiration to draw back on, but I do like how you framed it, to where going back to a contemporary issue of the representation of issues that the United States may be facing as a representation of how the Federation deals with it. I think that's a really interesting point.
All right, let's pivot to Seven Handyman. Handy, how did you enjoy seasons 1 and seasons 2 of Discovery? What did you like and what did you dislike?
Well, I liked just the overall fact that we had a new Star Trek season, the whole universe kind of to watch and get into. It's quite a bit different than what we've seen before, but a little bit wacky. But I enjoyed it. I think overall it was done pretty well. They just kind of came out of left field with all this mycelium and a little weird, right?
So you like the new universe, right? But you didn't really like the mycelium part, the introduction of kind of new slash better technology as opposed to what it should have been pre-original series.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen something a little more true to the timeline.
Kind of like how Enterprise was portrayed.
Yeah, I just would have liked to have seen something a little more true to the Star Trek world. That's all. But I mean, I still enjoyed it for what it is. I mean, with shows like this, especially created so long after, the original, like TNG, Deep Space Nine, all these shows, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, right? And you got to realize that it's a different show. You got completely different writers. They have their own ideas. They're probably even from a different decade. A different upbringing and whatnot, and they're just gonna write different. They're gonna, So
Sure, no, understandable.
But I thought it was fun. Some of the characters they brought in, like Saru, and some interesting people, really, some interesting characters. So I enjoyed that. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I think the cast is actually a very good cast and a very diverse cast. I actually very much enjoy the acting styles of Jason Isaacs, who played Captain Lorca. I think he was a very good captain and a very good, as in, like, he really fit that kind of doppelganger role very well. The only disservice that I could see with him is that Jason Isaacs always plays the bad guy. So it was you can kind of see the twist with that
Yeah,
with season one.
wasn't much of a surprise.
And Anson Mount as Captain Pike, I think he really did a good job. And I think Burnham's role really shined with Pike because it was more of that Kirk Spock relationship as opposed to uh, Spock evil bad guy relationship in season one. So I think Burnham really shined in season two because of that. But it's Discovery time. Season three. We're now whisked off into the future so we can get away from established canon and make our own canon. What do you think is going to happen in season three?
Oh, I think this AI is just gonna mess everybody up. I think it's gonna get all kinds of kooky and wacky.
Do you have any predictions?
Well, I'd say they're definitely going to go to the future.
Well, they are in the future because they
Right,
went through
right.
that portal.
That's right. Well, they're in the future, I guess I should say. So they went to the future. I don't know. I would guess that they're probably going to run into humans in the future. Maybe even some alternate versions of one of the characters, or probably Burnham. And they're going to just do battle with this AI, or they'll find some way to beat him in the past. So they'll probably find something to help them beat him in the past, right? And then they'll go back to the past and beat him then. That would be my guess.
All right, because I'll give my thoughts at the end once everybody's finished, but I definitely think it'll be a very interesting time paradox.
Yeah. To say the least.
All right, cool. Handy, man. Thanks for the input. Let's go to somebody else. Admiral Jansen, first of all, thanks for being on the podcast for the first time. We appreciate it. And
Definitely.
what did you like about seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery, and what didn't you like?
What I liked about it is it really brought Trek back. You know, after Enterprise, we were left with a big hole in the fact that there was no Trek being done at all. And then we got the JJ movies, and while I think a lot of the hardcore fans didn't care for them at first, or even at all, what they really did was bring back or introduce Trek to a new fan base. And I think that's what Discovery was attempting to do. I think Discovery was attempting to make content for those new fans who weren't necessarily those Trek fans from 20 years ago, and also make Trek for those hardcore Trek fans. And I think, you know, they definitely fell short on the hardcore Trek fans, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the action-packed sequences that they did in seasons 1 and 2. We didn't have the writing that we've come to expect from Trek, notoriously in The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and even Voyager. However, we got new Trek. And as a Trek fan myself, I was just all about that, and I definitely fell in love with it.
Well, I mean, it is a different set of people anyway. It's not your same guys. It's the Kurtzman Abrams crew as opposed to the Berman and Braga and Stephen Bear and Ronald D. Moore guys.
And it's really funny when I think about it, because I think about the talent, and I think about those moments with Jean-Luc or Sisko when they're making those choices on ethical dilemmas. And then I think about Captain Georgiou and then Captain Lorca. And I think that if they would have kept Georgiou on, they probably could have had that. But the nature of Lorca, I don't think it was definitely going to be a possibility, because everything he was going to do was going to be evil.
Well, I think I pointed out to Handy, and that is, I think Jason Isaacs is a great actor, but his one downfall is he always plays the villain. So it's not like it was unexpected for Lorca to be evil.
Right. And I think that the moments we got in episode 1 and 2 with Philippa Georgiou, I really did feel that she could have had that potential to have those moments and to really play up those storylines. But sadly, they turned her into a Terran, I think, far too quickly.
You mean the yum yum? So, what else did you like or not like about season 2, or at least Discovery? I know for you personally, there was more representation.
Yeah, definitely. So being an LGBT person watching Trek, I was so thankful there is finally a human being who is gay in the future. I got
A human, right? Because everything else was always an alien.
It was always,
and then-
having to appease the censors. So it was always how can we get this worked in? And I think that's what Trek does really well, especially with current events and political statements, is they never really came out and said it. Some ways they did, in some ways they didn't. But for me, a lot of the characterization, I'm trying to think if there was one character I didn't like on Discovery. There wasn't, but I did have a moment in season 2 where I'm like, there's a lot of women on the bridge. And it wasn't something where it was it was a bad thing, because I'm a huge feminist. However, I think Discovery went way overboard with it. You know, they really should have had some normalization to it. And I do love that the lead is a female, and a very strong female, and I love her character growth. However, I mean, let's give some love to the bridge crew. The thing that bothers me about Discovery is, who's the senior staff? Where's the chief engineer? I'm like thinking about all these different roles, and even like that the helm and ops person, and they're great actors, but we never get enough of them in plots or stories, and that is definitely one thing I hope Discovery will work on.
That's true. They're all wearing the same uniform, and there's no clear distinction between gold, which is command, red, which is engineering, blue, which is science. It's all one color. And you're right.
I mean,
I don't-
what
I don't-
I will say, I was crushed when Commander Arium was killed. I'm like, wait. You introduced this character in one episode, and she's awesome. I'm like totally buying into this. I'm like totally loving her story arc, and you kill her on me. I was so upset when that happened. I was like, no. But she was another one of my characters. She's probably one of my most favorite characters from season 2.
And you're right. I don't know who the chief engineer is. I don't think we've even seen the warp core in Discovery, have we?
No.
No, we know the spore drive, but the spore drive and the warp core, or maybe Tig Notaro is supposed to be.
Yeah. Jet Reno is I would say technically the chief engineer.
Right, but they didn't get her until season 2, right?
I feel like they spent a little bit on some of the things. I feel like they spent maybe a little bit too much time trying to over tackle some of the issues, and not enough time focusing on the show itself, and kind of getting those things out of the way. Because, as you said, in every other show, we know who the engineer is, we know who the security chief is, we know who the first officer is, we know who the medical person is, we know all the big staff, and we know all their stories. But on this one, to me, it just seemed like it was all over the place, because they were more worried about what's the word I'm looking for? I hate using the term political correctness, but trying to be all-inclusive, which is great, and I support it wholeheartedly. But I feel like maybe they focused on that a little bit too much, trying to be a little bit too progressive. At the
I don't think it's being PC. I think what they stumbled on is they knew that the main character wasn't going to be the captain. So I think that threw them in this kind of weird space, and they're focusing on this person who's a first officer. Now she's a prisoner. Now she's a science officer. Now she's going back to first officer. And so I think they focused way too much on Burnham and didn't give us a really strict structure of whose role is what.
You know, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I always thought the fact that the first, openly gay couple in the Star Trek universe, I thought that they presented that in the most tasteful way possible, and I don't see how anyone could not think that was done, and it was presented as a couple. You can completely eliminate the fact that it was two guys out of it. It was just they had couples problems, and they did it in such a way that it was like, dude, that's totally relatable to whether you are married to a man or a woman or whomever. I think they did it in a way where they weren't trying to spoon feed it to you. It was just, hey, these are people, and this is what they do. Yeah,
and that's what I really enjoyed about Dr. Culber and Stamets was, I mean, we really did see what Stamets was withholding from his partner, and kind of the story arc he had with Tilly, and how much he didn't want to, but how much he had to save the career of his partner. So that was a really interesting story arc that they did.
Except for the whole, Culber dying and being trapped in the mycelial network.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
All right, so Jansen, what do you think is season 3 is going to entail?
So, just want to touch on season 3 and my opinion on the transgendered and non-binary characters. One is a Trill, and I'm guessing that's a transgendered person because Trill are traditionally transgendered based on their symbiotes. And I love that. The non-binary is even, for people who aren't an LGBT, non-binary is still something we're discussing amongst ourselves. So I'm really glad they got a non-binary actor to play that non-binary character, because whatever way they're going to play it, they could be talked down either side. But now that they have a non-binary actor giving them advice on how they should rate this character, I think that was a home run that they did, even before we could watch. So I'm really curious to see how those characters play out, because I do believe the non-binary is human, if I am correct on that. But as of season 3, my expectation is definitely going to be something along the lines of an omega particle exploding. And we had talked previously about, that story arc they did in Next Generation where subspace was destroyed in that one star system because warp drive was slowly destroying it. I think it is definitely going to be one of those types of stories. And the Discovery, because of its sport drive, will be the only ship that can get around. In the previews, we saw multiple races cohabitating together, and there were several scenes where they're like, we thought the Federation forgot about us, which makes me believe that the Federation has lost contact with these people. I'm assuming that the Federation use communication arrays, and we've seen many storylines where ships are dispatched to do repairs. So if those repairs can't be done, I'm really curious to what effect that Starfleet can communicate with its members. So I think what it's going to be is we see the Discovery, going to different locations. So I'm assuming they're sport jumping all over the place. And I assume that they're going to fix whatever calamity happened and put the Federation back together. I'm excited. It looks really fun. Definitely action packed, as that's what Discovery does. But I'm really curious to see how the writing is going to improve, because I am convinced that they are working very hard. We've seen in Lower Decks. I've heard from YouTubers, it's the best first season of any Star Trek series ever. And that's a huge claim to make, especially on a Kurtzman series. So, I'm just
gonna have to interject and say I'm gonna have to go ahead and disagree.
Okay, God, what's his name? The guy from Office Space with the cup.
Right.
Played by Gary Cole. Like, yeah, I'm gonna need you to come in Saturday.
So,
Kirk, I challenge you to watch all of the Lower Decks episodes before making that claim.
The claim is based on the last episode.
Yes.
So the
last episode was really good. It was I will say the last episode of Lower Decks was very Star Trek.
So basically, I think that what they are trying to do, even though some fans don't want to hear it, I think they are trying to take the feedback from fans saying, we need better writing. This could be so much better. What is going on? I'm not even going to talk about Klingons because that's a whole podcast in itself. However, I do think that they are trying to merge the needs of the fans And I do believe that Lower Decks gave us a glimpse into that. So I'm really curious to see what kind of writing is going to be given to us in Discovery.
All right. Admiral Jansen, the ever optimist.
Definitely.
All right. And last but not least, in alphabetical order, it's UltimatDJz. UltimatDJz, man. How'd you like season 1 and 2 of Discovery?
You know, I've talked about this a little bit before. I think season 1, when the show first came out, it started out a little bit weird for me. Like, it took me a couple of episodes to really actually start to enjoy it. I think, and I've said this to a lot of people who have said the same thing. If you watch the first episode or two, you're not necessarily like super into it. But if you can get past like those stumbling blocks that a lot of good series have, look at Next Gen. The first the first season, the first several episodes, it was a little rough, right? If you can get through that, I believe that the second half of season 1 was spectacular. Season 2, all of season 2 was phenomenal. I love the plot, I love the storyline, I love the intricacy of all the appearances of the Red Angel. So I think the writing was actually really, really good in season 2. I definitely enjoyed season 2 more than season 1.
All right. Anything you didn't like about seasons 1 or 2?
Well, like I said, just that it took a minute to get going. It took a minute to actually kind of take off as far as season 1 goes. In season 2, I do think that it was really, really well written. I especially like how they wrapped up the season finale, as to why the modern Star Trek world has never heard of the Spore Drive, why it's never heard of Spock's sister, why in the original series and all throughout the Kelvin timeline, all the different appearances of Spock, and why have we never heard of his sister? I think that there were some really decent ways that they kind of tied up that season, and have now kind of left that storyline open leading into season 3, which is very much unknown at this point.
All right. And so again, just to reiterate from the beginning of the episode, again, I'm not necessarily a fan of the writing of Discovery. I'm a fan of Star Trek, so I'm going to watch it. I love Star Trek, but my synopsis is basically season 2 was kind of a mess since it just mothballed everything. 7 signals, a Red Angel.
Here's the thing: the
time traveling AI.
The story, so the AI was the hardest piece to swallow. Okay, control was the hardest piece, but it kind of also fits. And again, you take the dialogue, because the dialogue, I do agree, was a little weak, but the overall story arc, the overall plot, and the way that they wrote everything and made it fit into our perception of canon of modern Star Trek, I think that was done pretty well. It was done pretty intelligently. Yeah, now listen, you have a couple of interpersonal scenes with really awkward text, or really awkward language or verbiage. Yeah, that definitely existed. I'll give you that one. But the plot and the way that it was written, I think, I definitely think it gets a passing grade.
All right. So, what are your predictions for season 3?
Well, we know Alex Kurtzman's still involved, so I have to feel like he's not going to screw this up, okay? I have to feel like he's not going to screw it up. I'll tell you this, though. After watching the 3-minute trailer, I'm actually, if that was my first exposure to Discovery, I wouldn't watch it. The trailer, to me, was extremely disappointing. The trailer is kumbaya and rebuilding civilization, and I'm not interested in that. However, if they can find some kind of a story plot, if they can find something engaging and really kind of Star Trek-y to dive into, then I'm all for it. But watching that 3-minute trailer, I'm gonna say no go for me. But obviously, I'm gonna watch it. I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm gonna watch it, and from what I hear from you blasted Europeans over there who are already watching it, I hear that it's really, really good. So that does excite me more, and I will watch it tonight. Very, very excited while doing so.
So, but any predictions? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, yeah, I don't have a prediction simply because I expect it to be terrible, but everyone is telling me it's going to be great. So, my expectation is, yay, we're in a futuristic society that hates the Federation, and the Federation failed, and now these time-traveling vigilantes are going to rebuild the Federation and rebuild the ideals of which the Federation was founded and blah, blah, politics, blah, blah. I'm not interested in that. But I'm being told that it's not that, so I hope and pray that it's not.
I love that a bunch of us think that there's going to be some weird, crazy time travel plot thing that's going to happen, and ultimately, maybe it'll make sense, maybe it won't.
Well, but here's the thing, Tech. They can't come back. Okay, they can't come back because that would violate canon of every other series, every other property. They cannot come back. Now, there could be a time traveling piece. Okay, there could be a time traveling piece to this story. But what we do know, and my God, Kurtzman, if you mess this up, they cannot come back. Tech, they can't come back in the original series, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. None of them ever mentioned this ship, this story, because of the way season 2 ended. So they cannot come back. If they introduce some plot to do that, then the story's ruined.
Well, the thing that I've kind of thought about was the fact that they're in between the end of Nemesis or Picard now rather, and the Sphere Builder storyline with the temporal agents, because the temporal agents are I think 1,000 years further into the future than where Discovery ends up. So if Kurtzman and company are paying attention, then I truly believe there's going to be somehow, some way, maybe in a way, where they have to correct the timeline path through some sort of time paradox.
Do you think that we see Future Man from the Enterprise
you mean
series?
Daniels? I don't think we will see Daniels, but it's not beyond me to assume that there's going to be the temporal agent aspect somewhere. And I hope to God it's not Captain Braxton either, because that was just...
You know what, Captain Braxton aside, if we do see some type of temporal agent working against the Discovery crew, that would actually probably entice me a little bit. All right, I kind of like that, tit for tat, that, one step forward, two steps back, this constant battle between them and the timeline police trying to pretend that they never arrived. I could actually buy into a story like that. What I don't want to see is, from the ground up, rebuilding the beautiful ideals and socio-economic status of the original Federation. Not
they're going to recreate the Archer scene where he creates the Federation with Burnham.
Yeah,
it's the new Federation.
Yeah, not interested in that. Unless you punch a Klingon in the face, you could do that. That might be interesting.
Well, Klingons might look different now. It's like 900 years into the future. They might grow a few more ridges.
They looked differently 900 years in the past, too, according to Kurtzman, so who knows?
All right. Thanks, DJs. I appreciate the input, man.
Hey, thanks, Tech.
My thought process on what is going to happen with Discovery Season 3 is they're going to appear in the future. They're going to crash land on some sort of planet. And then they're going to find out that AIs have taken over. The various races are scattered, and there's going to be a sort of time travel paradox where Discovery will need to fix the Federation in order to preserve its past by preserving its future. And maybe they'll bring in the temporal agents.
Just not Captain Braxton.
No. Daniels from the temporal agents in Enterprise. I just have a feeling they're just going to throw something out there that's kind of weirdly canon and just throw it in there. Be like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, we're gonna find out what's at least in the first episode in about 6.5 hours.
All right, so I want to thank everybody for their opinions and thoughts, and hopefully we'll meet right all back here, and we'll discuss what happens in the first episode of Discovery.
Perfect.
So I want to thank Handyman, Kirk, UltimatDJz,
Amorgin and Admiral Jansen for stopping by. As always, this has been Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk. I'm TechMan16.
And I'm Strange Kirk.
And we'll see you guys next time.